Hey friends, I'm Jess Connolly. I'm an author, a coach, a Bible teacher, and a local church leader, and I love talking to real people who know what it means to have full lives, but also want to walk in abundance. This podcast is for you. It's not my podcast, it's ours. It's for people who crave lighthearted conversations and deeply spiritual truth. It's for people who are busy, tired, waiting, growing, dreaming, working, or praying about what's next. Wherever you're listening from, if it's quiet, mundane, or busy, I am praying for you, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. This week, Nick and I sat down with no script, no plan, just a handful of raw, unfiltered questions about marriage. We're talking sex, we're talking conflict, and we're talking about how messy and beautiful it is to be two imperfect people in a covenant relationship with a perfect God. If you're married, if you want to be married, or if you're just curious how we handle difficult things behind the scenes, this one's for you. We don't have all the answers, but we're showing up honestly because that's where healing starts. Let's get into it. Nick Connolly, this podcast is the definition of a hard-fought hallelujah.
Literally.
Have we ever fought for something as hard as we fought for this episode? Yes. The answer is yes.
But also, we've been fighting hard for this.
We've been fighting hard for this. We sat down last week. We recorded this podcast episode. It actually took us 2 recording sessions to even get the original episode out. God bless our children that we had to multiple times, because it's summer and they're home, and we had to multiple times yell, put your headphones on, because we wanted to spare them from this conversation.
Yes.
And it took us about 2 hours to record it the first time. The recording turned out awful.
Horrible.
Something was off with the sound. Our incredible audio producer, Daniel, did an amazing job, and he couldn't save it. Something was wrong with my mic. So we're sitting down to re-record because the conversation felt too important and too helpful for somebody to have to listen to like sand in their ears.
It's not great.
Thanks for joining us on this podcast episode. Now, I want to say one more disclaimer before we hop in, and that is that you and I, local church leaders, pastors, we're communicators. At our church, Bright City, we have 3 services on a Sunday. And my biggest struggle is not saying the phrase, like I was telling the earlier service, because I have a problem with disingenuosity. I really hate to be disingenuous. So I'm going to really struggle to not say, like we said on the podcast last week.
Yeah, but that did.
It didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
But there are some things that I really want to make sure we capture and say again, but in a genuine way.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I'm just trusting, like God will do what God will do.
Yep.
But I did ask you at the beginning of that last episode, like, hey, how do you feel about this podcast? I haven't given you a lot of insight about where we're going. Now you know where we're going. But like, how do you feel about doing such a raw, unfiltered marriage podcast?
I think what is interesting is I don't know. I'm excited about re-recording because I feel like there's more here.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like every day, I don't know if this is a good way to say this, but I feel like every day is almost like having a dog year effect in our life.
Yeah.
Where I feel like every day is 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I feel like between us recording this, the last time we hit record, is 1 days equal 3 months.
Yeah.
I feel like we've just had a year and some change pop by just in this week.
Truly.
And even just marriage talks that we had even after the podcast that had nothing to do with the podcast, I don't think.
The only thing I would say that had to do with the podcast is that I have never felt such poignant spiritual warfare in a long time.
Yeah.
I felt like from the second we started recording, I felt like pretty intense spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for us to like have, I don't know, it wasn't even an intense discussion. It was like a heavy discussion about marriage.
Yeah.
Like I think it was too heavy to be. I feel, I don't know if this is, maybe people who've been married 20 years and longer can speak to this, but I feel like 0 to 20 years of your marriage, the discussion is intense and heavy.
Yeah.
Is like, maybe there's like a volume level and a sharpness.
Yeah.
And I feel like in this season of marriage, the discussions have just been heavy. Like I think we're like both tired, exhausted.
We don't yell anymore.
Yeah, you're too tired to yell. Like you're too tired to
you
fight.
just say something, you're like, oh, well, we just said that.
Yeah, but also not in a bad way.
Not
just
in a bad way.
It just in like, hey, I feel like for you're learning more about your feelings and communication style, and I'm learning the same about mine.
Yeah.
And so again, we've talked about this many times by way of marriage is when you're married, you're creating a new life. You're creating a new language.
Yeah.
As you become one with someone. So all that to say is I think I feel so excited about getting a second chance.
Yeah.
And kicking the enemy in the teeth. And then I think the other thing that always weighs heavy on me when we talk about marriage is I have always struggled when other people talk about the logistics and the specifics of their marriage.
Yeah.
Not because of it being vulnerable information shared in the open.
Yeah.
I just feel like anytime you add specifics to a conversation around marriage, so that means specifics about sex, frequency, about specifics about how you do what you do, all the things, conversations, fighting, how often you fight. I just feel like every time you add a specific number to something, it strikes up a little bit of a spirit of comparison in our hearts.
Yeah.
And so I think, anytime we talk about marriage, I always hold that to where it's like, oh, I don't, this isn't about comparing. This isn't about, well, how often do you do this? How often do y'all do this? How many times do you fight? Like, how many times do you not fight? Like, I always come about these conversations by way of, I hope that they're encouraging more than striking up like a shame and guilt or condemnation about marriage. So
yeah, absolutely.
I always hold that.
Yeah, that's good. That's wise. I want to say one more thing about spiritual warfare in marriage, which we actually didn't get to the first time we recorded this. So
new info.
You know how I love your laser noises. Anytime you step into something as a married couple, anytime one of you steps into something, you're stepping into something as a married couple. And we have just always kind of seen that like the best way the enemy can get at us is one another.
Yeah.
And so I will say, I felt not only some spiritual warfare around this conversation, this podcast episode, but around our upcoming marriage retreat. So we're hosting our first ever marriage retreat, To Become More is the name of the retreat, with our brother and sister, my sister, our brother-in-law, but we just call them brother and sister.
I do. I told Katie that I was going to stop calling her my sister-in-law a long time ago.
Yeah, same. That's how I feel about Josh. He's my brother. And they are literal marriage experts. They have written a book on marriage. Katie is a marriage therapist. She's also a pastor of marriage at their very large megachurch. Like, this is what she does. This is what they do. They're so good at it.
They have good authority with it.
Yeah. What we're bringing to the table for the marriage retreat is vision and coaching, because that's what we like to help individuals and couples do. But I do sense that there is an attack of the enemy on couples coming together and saying, like, what has God called us to? What does God have for us in the future?
Yeah.
And, we had a planning day with them the same day we recorded the podcast last week, where we're planning a little bit more about the retreat. And it's so funny, but both of us were saying, like, it is wild because individuals in a couple will go away on girls' trips, guys' golf trips, work trips to work on their own calling, etc. But they will not necessarily always invest in their marriage unless it's an issue.
A crisis.
Yeah. Unless there's a problem.
Yeah.
So this is your formal invitation. If you haven't heard about the To Become More retreat, meet us here in Charleston, July 21st and 22nd. You're going to get 2 marriage experts. You're going to get 2 pastors. I don't know what to call us. We're coaches. That's what we're good at. We're good at helping people move forward. And we would just love to be on your team and help you work on your vision as a couple, as a family, your goals, your priorities, also to really step into the more intimacy, the more presence with one another, the more joy over your marriage.
Yeah.
And our encouragement would be like, don't just settle for okay. Don't just settle for things being okay. And don't wait until there's a problem or a crisis.
Yeah.
Invest in your marriage now.
I would just say that if you don't have a clear path, a clear calling, a clear destination, a clear vision for your marriage, there could be more potential for a crisis.
Yeah.
So I just think it's like kicking the enemy in the teeth before he even gets a chance.
So good. Okay, let's get to the fun stuff. We're doing 3 big buckets today, 3 big conversations. I went to Instagram. I said, okay, hey, we don't even have a title for this podcast episode. We're doing raw, unfiltered, married questions. What are your big questions? What are the things you would ask if you could ask anything? And people asked really like 2 main questions, 2 big buckets.
Yeah.
They asked about sex and they asked about conflict.
Okay.
So I have multiple subtitles under each of those buckets.
Okay.
I have number 1, we're going to talk about sex. Number 2, we're going to talk about conflict. Then we're going to talk about miscellaneous. Number 1, here are the 3 big questions we're going to handle under the sex topic. What's normal?
Okay.
What's healthy?
Okay.
And how do we handle extenuating circumstances?
Okay.
Kids, birth, depression, hormones, etc. Okay. So let's first go to question number 1, which was asked in a variety of different ways. What is normal when it comes to a sex life?
Yeah.
You go first.
Thanks. I think it goes back to what I said earlier is I think anytime you are entering into a marriage, anytime you are entering into a covenantal relationship with someone, what is normal is determined by both people.
Yeah.
So let me just take, for example, having a relationship with someone where you go to coffee or a friendship. Like friendships exist because there are either written or unwritten expectations or definitions around what is normal for the relationship. So like I know when you have your relationships with your friends, specifically your grow group, which you've talked about, there is a normality of frequency by which you meet and how long you meet.
Yeah.
And these are the expectations and this is what's clear. And this is all the things that happen when you come into this group and there's clear boundaries and definitions around it. But it was because you guys took the time to define those things.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I see in marriages, especially around the topic of physical intimacy is in sex, is that there is no common language. There are no common boundaries. It's just one person wants one thing and the other person wants another thing.
Yeah.
And because one person isn't getting what they want, then the other person has to figure out how they can give that other person what they want. Yeah. And as a result, they miss out on the abundance of what it's actually supposed to mean for them too.
Yeah.
And so I think normal by way of sexual intimacy is based off of the common language that both people come to the table with, and they say, hey, this is normal for us. Like this is what we feel like is best for us. This is what we, not concerned about what they do or what other people do or what so-and-so said down the street. And this is, how many times that they do X, Y, and Z. And I find that the more vocal people are about the specifics of their sex life, the worse it actually is. I have seen it over and over and over again. Yeah. Like
Sorry, that was funny.
I'm just like, I don't know why. I just see it over and over again. I just think the more vocal people are about the badges that they wear and how they tout their sex life, I just feel like it's usually worse off. And so I just think when you're talking about physical intimacy in marriage and relationships, specifically physical parts of them, it is a common language and a common, I don't know, it's just like a common thing determined by both people in the relationship.
Yeah, that's good. What I'm hearing you say is the real pros move in silence.
I think the people secure in their physical intimacy within the relationship are secure because two people have worked really hard to establish what that security is.
That's good. One thing that we shared on the podcast last week, I promise not to say that over and over again.
At the first service. No,
at the first service. What I told the people at the 9:00. One thing we talked about is that probably about 10 years ago, so we've been married almost 20 years this July. Mm-hmm. About 10 years ago, we had a conversation where you asked me, you said, hey, regarding sex, this would be my question for you, my ask of you, which I will say you and I are very different in general about talking about things.
Yep.
You are incredibly modest. Mm-hmm. Hilariously, I told you I had a dream last night about your modesty. And I mean modest in the truest sense of the word. Like the best parts of your life, not anybody else is going to know about really, because you're not a braggart. And like, I don't know, like I was telling you this weekend, like you enter every space. People often think you don't know anything about what you're talking about because you enter every space so humble. Like you'll be an expert about something and nobody will know.
I want to enter every space. Like I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So in general, I cannot imagine a universe wherein you would talk about our sex life to anyone because that's not your vibe.
Yeah. I would give warning lights to people. I would say, hey, these are things that maybe you want to consider, talk about, determine with your spouse.
But you wouldn't be talking about our sex life. I mean, like you would never go to a friend and be like, man, we had great sex last night.
Mm-mm.
I would totally do that.
Yeah.
In my healthiest. I mean, to be honest, I will still do that. Like I will go to a safe friend who is married. And if she said like, how are you? I will be like, we had great sex last night. That is my norm. And however, 10 years ago, you said it would really bless me if you would stop discussing specifics around frequency and details. Please do not share frequency and details with anyone. And I was like, okay. And what I have told you is also that in response to that, I have had now friends thank me to say like, hey, thank you for not ever. And if a bunch of wives are sitting around and we're saying like, well, how often do you have sex? How often do you have sex? If I will say like, I'm not going to share frequency, I don't feel like that's helpful because there is no normal. That's my answer to this question. There actually is no normal.
Yeah.
And there is no normal even for every couple because every couple is going to change in every single season.
Yeah.
And I've had people say like, thank you. That is actually helpful because it isn't helpful to hear. Maybe, people say things that feel damaging or maybe even people say things that make you feel prideful about your relationship when you don't need to be feeling prideful, So I am really thankful for that you gave me that. I will say this, like, my perspective on this answer is like, there is no normal. Yeah. There actually is no normal. Yeah. We have never had a normal, not in our first year of marriage, not in our first 10 years of marriage. And I think that has been incredibly helpful for us because instead of saying like, are we doing enough? Yeah. We're saying like, are we loving each other well? Yeah. Which kind of for me
based off of the season.
Yeah. And that leads me into my next question, which is like, if we're out of asking like, hey, what's normal? What's expected? What do we have to do? What do we have? Which is just, sex. We do not want it to be a have to. We want it to be a get to, but if we're going to move out of this like have to conversation, let's move into the get to, like what's healthy for a married couple. And I'll go first because I have some notes about this. I wanted to really think about this. And so I want to be able to like give my personal definition of healthy, knowing we're not marriage therapists or sex therapists. For me, what's healthy is safety, generosity, communication, and a willingness to try again. Yeah. So safety meaning like nobody feels coerced. Nobody feels pressured. Nobody feels like they're having to earn love or earn approval or earn affection. Yeah. I would say also safety in the specifics. So obviously our rule is we don't talk specifics. So we're certainly not going to on a podcast. But I think a lot of people's follow up is like, what is this? Is it okay if we do this? Is this permissible? Is this permissible? And I would say like, does it feel safe to you? Can you have a conversation about it? Then my next part of that healthiness would be generosity. Like, are you actually being generous with each other? Not just, we're going to talk about this in a minute, not just a woman being generous with a man and saying like, well, this is what he needs, so I'm going to give him what he needs. We're going to talk about that in a second. But like, are you being generous with one another? Yeah. Are you communicating about your desires? Are you communicating about your hopes, your dreams, your wishes? Are you communicating about how it's going? Are you communicating after sex and having conversations about that? And then are you willing to say like, okay, let's try that again. Yeah. Like, let's try all of those things again to keep growing for the rest of our lives. Yeah. So that's what feels healthy for me. And the only other addendum to that is that to me, a healthy sex life is an overflow of intimacy and an expression of the intimacy you already have. Yeah. Your turn.
Amen. We say this all the time is if you want a better sex life within the marriage, you need a better intimacy with your spouse. Yeah. And so like it doesn't happen unless you are connecting emotionally. because the physical is an overflow of the emotional.
Yeah.
And something changed in our relationship and sex life when we connected emotionally
Yeah.
and grew emotionally. And also when we realized that it wasn't just good for the husband. I mean, I feel like we talk about this all the time, is like, it wasn't just some like notch on your like wife belt. It was like, oh my gosh, like this is something God has created for me as well.
Yeah.
And so I think just talking about your get to versus the have to is like, when it turned to the get to for you, I felt like we connected in a different way emotionally. And I feel like this is really difficult to describe because there is such a physicality associated with sexual intimacy. Like it does physical things, and it is because of physical things. So I think I'm going to try to do this in a way to describe like the mysteries of God, but I'm telling you that when you are clicking on all cylinders by way of emotional and physical intimacy, there is something about sexual intimacy that does something emotionally that is, I just feel like it far surpasses the physical, which is like so hard to describe.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, I think there is just something there where God has created this beautiful gift to be enjoyed. And it really is the overflow of intimacy. And I think that's so important. Actually, there was another thing you said that was really important too. But I think that's so important as we are in a cultural moment where everything is about the physical.
Yeah.
Like I feel like if I get one more daily routine suggestion starting at 4 a.m. and like doing all the things to biohack, I feel like so many people are so focused on the physical aspects of everything that they've forgotten the emotional and they've forgotten the spiritual. Therefore, they still are hitting a wall in their sex life. And it's because they haven't addressed the emotional. It's because they haven't addressed the intimacy issues or opportunities with their spouse.
Yeah.
And so I think that's huge. And then the other thing I want to capture that you said by way of communication, because I am so intrigued by this generation that is coming behind us, because so just maybe again, I don't know how this plays out for everybody, so I'll just say it. But we did not grow up in the quote unquote like next Netflix and chill era.
No.
And so like I don't have questions because I don't need details, but I
don't have questions because I don't want to hear the answer.
Yeah. I don't have questions at all. I don't want to hear the answer, but I am wondering. I wonder if there are a hang up in people's physical intimacy and emotional intimacy and spiritual intimacy because of the role of entertainment devices.
Yeah.
And so like, I don't know of how you would have a thriving sex life out of the overflow of streaming.
Yeah.
Or out of the overflow of watching shows. And like, I guess this is details, but just like going right into it, I do wonder if there is a generation of people coming behind us that don't know how to talk about these things, that don't know how to voice these things with their spouse, that don't know how to use the emotional connection and the spiritual connection as an on-ramp to the physical connection that is going to make it what God intended it to be. And so I have questions about that.
Yeah. I'm going to respond to that by way of moving into our conversation on extenuating circumstances, essentially like issues in your sex life. I couldn't agree more with you. And again, fresh content. We didn't talk about this last week when we first recorded the podcast. I think you're so right about the capacity to connect intimately, emotionally, and physically outside of sex. When there's so much to distract you. I would also just say our attention spans are so low.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard, and I'll ask for forgiveness, not permission to say this, it takes a dedicated time attention span to have great sex. This is not a 15-second, 45-second situation. Like you have to pay attention to your partner. You have to you cannot be like on a screen. You can't be watching TV and on a screen and like looking away and watching the next reel. Like it takes time to love someone well, not only emotionally, but physically, Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay, let's go to our first extenuating circumstance, because in this section, I want to talk a little bit about like kids, hormone, depression, like anything that might come against or that you might feel like is hindering your sex life. This would also include like, just stress. But one question you and I got in that question box when I asked on Instagram was, how do you guys feel like purity culture affected your relationship? And so I want to speak to that now.
Yeah.
So Nick and I were married in the height of purity culture.
Pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew.
Wrong kind of lasers.
I did get a True Love Waits ring.
Yeah.
In my teens. I did not honor the True Love Waits ring.
Yeah.
So before I met you, before I became a believer, I did not live a pure life in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met Jesus, I felt like he gave me a new life, new heart, and a fresh start, having healthier relationships. So also, this is our PSA. What do we think a healthy sex life looks like? We think it looks like a sex life in the boundaries of marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not because we think sex is shameful or bad or awful. We think it's because it's beautiful and loving and like abundant and wild and incredible. And that it's healthiest when it's in the boundaries of marriage, because the emotional, mental, and physical maturity that it takes for you to connect with someone is best done with someone that you're united to.
Yeah. Connection comes out of commitment.
Yeah. So, if that's not clear, that's what we believe. And we don't feel like that's a message of shame. We actually feel like that's a message of extreme freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is where you're going to experience the most freedom in that.
Yeah.
I certainly don't feel like having had sex before marriage disqualifies you from having good sex in your marriage, because it did not in our case for me. You and I had a conversation before we got married. You know my history, you know my story. And we have said we did not feel like it hindered us in any way, shape, or form. We have shared, 2 Corinthians 5:17 was my favorite verse.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking around saying over and over again, there is therefore now that's Romans 8.
Therefore, if anyone is in Christ,
he is a new creation.
The old is gone and the new has come.
I like that Romans 8 too.
Yeah.
But both verses apply here.
Yes.
There's also therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Yeah. That being said, we were married in the height of purity culture. And here's how I feel like it negatively impacted us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it wasn't just purity culture. It was this also like mask of like extreme toxic masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
I would say a perversion of the idea of submission and leadership.
Yep. Which
again, if you just want to know where we stand, I love headship. I love the concept of submission. I'm not only female to male, but male to female, because we see that in scripture. We see a mutual submission, that we would submit to one another and we would submit to the Lord. But I do believe in headship.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like you are the leader of our family, and that does not negate my leadership in any way. It's a safe and whole and healing place for me to live.
Mm-hmm.
All that being said, I'm about an Edenic return to partnership, meaning going back to Eden, how it was supposed to be. But what we were hearing preached in the early 2000s was, I would say, a perversion of that. And I think you can still hear that preached in churches across America and at marriage retreats across America. And so this idea that like sex is for the man. The man needs sex. He needs a certain amount of sex every day. He is going to struggle in these certain ways that you're not going to struggle. Guess what? Women struggle with pornography too. Guess what? Women are visual creatures too. And guess what? Also, women are deeply benefited by sex as well.
Yeah.
And it is actually a gift, not just for the man, but for the woman. And so how purity culture negatively impacted us is that for the first 10 years, maybe not the full first 10 years, but I would say for sure, like year through year 8, while I enjoyed sex and while it was fun for me and while I desired it, I felt like it was this thing I gave you.
Yeah.
I felt like it was this thing I did for you.
Yeah.
And you actually never made me feel that way.
Mm-mm.
You never made me feel that way. Culture made me feel that way.
I actually was the one that came to you and said like, hey.
You were the one who came to me and said like, I think you may be misunderstanding. I actually don't want you to have sex with me because you think you should.
Yeah.
I think you said like, I think this might be fun for you too.
I don't know if were you trying to do a challenge?
I think I was in fact trying to do a challenge. I think I was like, let's do 10 days in a row. Like, let's be those people.
Yeah.
Just FYI, how many times in our marriage I've tried to do challenges for different things. You are always the person that's like, can we not? Like,
not
can we not?
Area. Yeah.
Can we not do a challenge?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, almost any area of my life that I try to do a challenge, you're like, what's the point?
I don't know. I embrace your challenges these days.
Sometimes. But
you're on like a protein challenge right now. I'm like,
get between me and a protein powder.
Good for you.
You'll get taken out, I am on a protein challenge. It's working. That being said, you were the first person that was like, again, and up until then, I enjoyed sex. It wasn't like I was just gritting my teeth and getting through it. It was just like the way I approached it was the sole focus was like, well, this is what I should do.
Yeah.
And so the fruit of it was not as beautiful and bountiful as it could have been. So everything changed when we realized like, oh, this is actually a gift for me as well.
Yeah.
And so I will say like whatever damage, purity culture, your past sexual history, what you were taught, what you were shown, what you saw as a kid, what you once felt addicted to. I just would like to say, I don't know a single couple who has gone out mutually for redemption and said, we want to see God restore this lie so that we can live in the truth. I don't know a single couple that hasn't experienced freedom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You go at it together and say like, hey, whatever was in our past, we're going to actually throw off shame and work together to see this restored. And God wants couples to have great sex. I think it's a gift he gave us.
Yeah.
It's so kind of him.
It's incredibly kind.
I would just say like, go for the restoration, whatever it is. That being said, let's talk about some of the things you might need restoration from. Kids, having them, being pregnant with them, having them in your bed, nursing, not getting sleep.
Yeah.
It's hard out there.
Yeah.
There is no normal. There is only healthy.
Yeah.
And healthy is a discussion about safety, generosity, communication, and trying again.
It's really good.
It gets better. Can I say that? That gets easier.
Yeah.
Our kids are 18, 17, 16, and 12.
Yeah.
Nobody interrupts our sleep.
It gets, but then the challenge is now the interruptions happen by way of what would have been times of intimacy. Yeah. Is like, that's when they want to talk. That's when it's like youth group hour. And it's like, we get to sleep in, but we also are staying up later.
It's true because our kids want to talk about the world. Last night, they were all hanging out.
Yeah.
It was 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock passed.
And I was like, this is so beautiful, guys. I need to go take a shower.
It's ingrained in my head.
I need to put my pajamas on.
And you're normally the one that's like, let's go long, let's go hard.
And I couldn't make it last night. I was like, I gotta put my pajamas on.
Yeah.
So I would just say like, the best thing about seasons is they start and they end.
Yeah. They change.
So if you can have honest conversations in the season of childbearing years, I do not think it needs to be a sexual barren wasteland. I do think it is going to be different.
Yeah.
And
it has to be.
It has to be.
And God, like, he created and controls all of this. And so like the seasons, the body, like all of it, like I think he's out for our good. He wants good for us. And so I think there is good in whatever season you're in. You just got to figure out what that is.
Calling all married couples. Your marriage, your family, your calling, and your legacy deserves intentional care. And couples who continually find themselves pouring out need moments to be poured into. I am so excited to announce that my husband and I, Nick, and our best friends and my sister and brother-in-law, Josh and Katie Walters, are hosting a 2-day marriage retreat this summer in Charleston called To Become More. When two people join their lives with vision, intentionality, and grace, they don't just grow, they multiply. What God joins together doesn't just become one, it becomes more. More strength, more clarity, more impact, more joy. But you need people to pour into your marriage. To Become More is going to be a sacred pause for couples who want more intentionality, deeper connection, and who are desperate for more clarity in their individual and joint callings. Together, the four of us have been married for over 45 years. We've had decades of pastoring and counseling and coaching people, and we are so pumped for this 2-day retreat that will give you and your marriage space to take an honest and grace-filled inventory of your life, your ability to connect deeper in your relationships, and a refresher in your rhythms while crafting a shared vision for what's next in your marriage and your family. If you're tired, if you're ready to give up, if you're longing for direction, this weekend is for you. These days are for you. Join us at To Become More. You can sign up at the link in our show notes or go to goandtellgals.com/to become more.
Yeah.
Just get your hormones checked.
All the time.
Both of you.
Men too.
Men and women. Just get your hormones checked. And then have safe, generous conversations about it. I told you there's a podcast on perimenopause that I'm very eager for you to listen to.
Yeah, you said
I haven't sent it yet.
In the previous service, in the other episode, you said you sent it to me, and I was like, oh, you didn't send it to me.
No, I'm going to send it to you.
Send it to me.
I'm going to send it to you.
Can I, PSA for men, if they're listening to this, I am so happy and so glad that there are so much by way of women via hormones. Like you all have hormones, and I do acknowledge that your hormones happen more frequent than us by way of cycle.
Well, in perimenopause, I'm out here.
It's mean streets.
I'm just saying the cycle's getting shorter, which is actually about to take me out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know of too many people talk about male hormones.
Yeah.
And I think if I do see or hear it, it's by way of like gains in the gym.
Yeah.
And I just think that there is like such a disservice to men in that realm.
Yeah.
Because nobody's talking about getting their blood work done, getting their, I don't know. I just feel like because women go through so much by way of hormones and child rearing and trying to do all of the things, mothering and even in the attempts of being a mother, there's just, it always feels like the stipulation is that women need to get checked out. Women need to fix their problems. Women need to do this. And I just think that there is the same opportunity for men. And so this is a plug for something that has been incredible for you, but I think would be good for all your listeners is the Function app. Like there has got to be a regular rhythm of you getting your blood drawn to check your hormones and all the levels, because if there is something off there, there's going to be something off emotionally. There's going to be something off physically, and you are already starting from -10 rather than starting at 0. And so no matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter how much work you put into it, if you are shooting yourself in the foot physically, then it's never going to be what it could be. And so I just think I can't say that enough for men, that I think there's a lot of talk about extenuating circumstances by way of women. And I think and wonder if it could be true for men too.
Yeah.
And so I just say all that to say, like, there is literally no shame for men to get checked out, to go to the doctor, to get things, worked on, because I just know that the enemy looks for every opportunity to heap shame and guilt on.
Yeah.
And it's just so crazy that it could be something so simple to fix.
Yeah.
But rather than talking to someone, getting help, men just sit in the shame and guilt.
Yeah.
And as a result, it affects their marriage, it affects their jobs, it affects how they parent.
Yes.
I mean, it affects all of it.
I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
But can you confirm, this is what I believe I have heard, low testosterone in men, that's going to lead to obviously a lower sex drive, a lower capacity in sexual activity.
And just passion for anything.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Motivation.
Yeah, motivation.
So, I mean, in the amount of DMs I got from women that were like, what do I do if my husband, is depressed? What do I do if he's struggling with his job? What do I do if I feel like he's not reading his Bible? Like all of these things, like, well, first of all, he may have something physically not going well with him because we live under the effects of a fallen world. Yeah. And testosterone does dip at a certain age. So get him checked out.
Many things. And it's not even age. It could be seasonal. It could be like something that shot your system and you have no idea about. Yeah.
You could have adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
Okay. The Function app I've shared about in the past. The Function app is a $500 a year subscription. Sounds exorbitant, but in that $500 a year, you get 2 to 3 sets of labs. I've realized
it's multiple pulls.
It's multiple pulls, but it's 3, I think, for women and 2 for men, because women, they're going to test you at one point on your period and then another point on your period. And then you're going to get a follow-up set of labs. So if you went to LabCorp, let's say, and said, hey, I'm going to order my own labs, or I'm going to go to my doctor and say, hey, will you do my testosterone, or will you look into my estrogen, or will you look into my progesterone? It might cost you a couple $100. It might cost you, $200 for labs, maybe $100 for the copay for the visit, and then you have to still decide what to do. And that doesn't include any follow-up. The Function app is $500 a year, and they test 109 things in your health.
It's so many things. So
they're going to test your sex hormones. They're going to test your thyroid. They're going to test your adrenals. They're going to test your inflammation markers.
It is specific for men and then specific for women. And that's what I love about it. And then you're going to get follow-up suggestions. Because the other thing that I've noticed is like sometimes, again, we are not medical. I don't want to get too far down that rabbit trail, but I think sometimes doctors in meeting in trying to correct the ship in men younger, they end up actually hurting them for the longevity.
Yeah.
And so I just love that there are multiple options for how you may or may not want to address the issue. And so I can't speak highly enough about it for it. I think it's just an incredible new frontier by way of health. But all that to say is it is an extenuating circumstance that maybe doesn't get talked about as much.
Agreed. Okay. Let's talk about other extenuating circumstances. Oh, and if you want the Hunction app, see the link in this bio.
Oh, yeah.
Kids, hormones. I would just throw in anything else there, like depression, stress, grief. Go back to safety, generosity, communication. There is no normal. There can be a healthy. Healthy is going to look different for every season. Yep. Patient with one another. Be loving, be kind, be generous to one another. And then this is the only other note I want to say is that when you start believing that sex is a get to and not a have to, when you start experiencing the fruit of sex is a get to, not a have to, it's not this chore we have to do to keep our marriage healthy. It's a gift. It's a gift that we actually get to experience in the midst of a healthy and intimate marriage already. What I have found is that sex actually does become a balm in grief, in stress, in fatigue. It can actually be like, okay, a way to like connect, to come home to your own body, to come home to your spouse, to feel at ease in a world that's on fire. Yeah. Like, I will just say this again, because we're not doing specifics. Like, just say this. There have been a lot of times where we've been like financially in a hard season. And I have said out loud to you multiple times, like, I can't believe sex is free.
Yes.
Like, we can't go on a date night. Yeah. We can't pay to go out to a restaurant. Yeah. Like, we certainly can't afford a babysitter. Yeah. You know, there's no vacation for us, but like sex is just whole free. Yeah. Free 99.
Free 99.
Let's talk conflict. We have 3 buckets in this section. We have big stuff, which is going to cover addiction, infidelity, depression. Second bucket is sniping and bickering. Third bucket is helping each other grow. Okay. So let's do the big stuff first, which we're going to do quickly. When we're talking addiction, infidelity, depression, I would say major financial crisis, death, illness. Yep. This is our insight. You need help.
Yeah. Like in not a shameful way, like in a actual, like probably what you're feeling is a feeling of insurmountability. Is that's the word, right? Like it's just, it's a big mountain, and it is a big mountain and you can climb it, but you need a Sherpa. Like you need someone to like help you. Yeah. And you're going to get through it and everything's going to be fine. And it's not going to be what defines you. It's not going to be like the darkest days aren't the final days. Like it is not, it feels too heavy and too weighty because it is. And you need someone to help you carry it.
Yeah. You need help. Yeah. Get in the light. Yeah. It's worth the fight. Yeah. Those are my 3 lines. Yeah. Yeah. Amen. And we believe in full redemption for your marriage. Yeah. Josh, and we've seen it.
Yeah. Josh and Katie's book, I feel like would be a huge help. And I always tell people in our church that like what we're doing is helping people take steps. And so when we offer a step and it's actually like a leap, a jump, or like it's actually too far to jump, then we're not helping people. Yeah. And so if you're listening right now and you're like, man, I do not know how on earth I'm going to get either myself or my spouse into a room to like talk about feelings or process with an expert or any of that. Like, that seems like an incredibly far jump. Yeah. What is helpful is it could start with a book. It could start with a podcast. It could start with a conversation. It could start with maybe you going first. Like it could start in so many different ways. Yeah. But I do know that any step you can take to receiving external help is huge. Yeah. And just keep taking those steps. And eventually, like, you're going to walk out on the other side. You're going to be stronger. You're going to be braver. And you're going to, I don't know, I just feel like there's going to be a power and authority on your life like never before from God.
That. Yeah, I agree. Let's move into sniping and bickering. Bickering, nagging, sniping at each other. This is our insight. Stop right now. This will be the most Enneagram 8 thing you hear me say maybe ever on this podcast. Just stop. You have authority over your mouth.
Yeah.
Women, if you don't want to feel like his mom, stop talking like you're his mom. Stop talking down to him. Just stop cold turkey. When you do it, apologize. Tell him, I'm really going to work on this. I don't want to do it anymore. I am not a marriage expert, but let's just hit a few things. Then you're going to say like, but how will he ever get it done? He's not going to get it done with you sniping at him. And it is a bad pattern. It is a bad pattern in your brain. It's a bad pattern in his life. People need to be spoken life to.
Yeah.
And what you and I said is like something, I don't know that we had a conversation about this. I don't know that we just got maybe too tired to stop bickering. I don't know.
I brought a lot of sarcasm to the marriage.
Yeah, but it certainly wasn't just you. I definitely brought a lot of like casual confrontation.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't you think? Casual correction.
You have a gift of
exhortation,
careful, carefrontation.
Carefrontation.
You're very good at like bringing things to light and talking about it. And again, like I grew up in a family where we didn't talk about anything or bring up anything meaningful. And so I think it was helpful for me, but also.
Yeah. But what you need to know is we're an Enneagram 1 married to an Enneagram 8. Nick's an Enneagram 1, which means he's a perfectionist. So do you think he thinks I don't do everything wrong? He does. I know you don't think I do everything wrong, but I know that if you were going to be honest, I don't load the grocery cart the right way. I don't. Actually, different. You know what, babe? I think the grocery cart might have been like the beginning of the catalyst of this conversation for us. And maybe the Enneagram even was like the beginning of the conversation. Yeah. Us understanding our Enneagram numbers, which some people love, some people hate. Yeah. But I would say like that the grocery cart might have been the beginning of like us talking about it, because you would consistently change how I arrange the grocery cart and maybe even correct me.
I would arrange and stack.
No, you would also say like, and put this over here, put this over here. You're going to crush that. Do this way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought like what I was bringing was my skill set, and what you
what I
heard
felt was like threatened.
And oh, stop correcting me. And it was like, oh, I'm just doing what I know to do. And I think one of the things that we've noticed is like different isn't wrong.
Yeah.
And there could be ways that each spouse lives differently, functions differently. And again, I'm not talking about sinfully, but just like preferences.
Yeah.
Different isn't wrong.
Yeah.
And that was huge for us.
Yeah. But I'm an Enneagram 8. Like I am very direct. I'm very honest. Again, genuosity is like my core values.
Yeah. You're very authentic.
So do you think that I never want to tell him to stop or do something or put this up or fix this or don't say that? Like I do. Something happened in our marriage and we just don't talk to each other like that anymore. Yeah. And I'm just telling you, like, just stop. Just stop. Just say, we don't want to do this anymore.
Did you say that you wanted him to stop?
I want him to stop.
Okay.
And then here's what I want you to do in replacement. I want you to turn the life speaking all the way up. Now, I do have to reference the last time we recorded this, because you said something that you have never said out loud to me, but I have said to other people.
Okay.
The evidence of how much we speak life in our marriage. I want to tell you how much we speak life. By that, I mean, we tell each other we love each other multiple times a day. We tell each other we're proud of each other multiple times a day. You tell me I'm a good leader, a good wife, a good mom every single day. I hope and pray that you hear me tell you you're a good leader, good pastor, good husband, good dad multiple times a day. But how we know our life speaking is through the roof. And I have no regrets about this. But I've told other people this in the past, but you have never acknowledged this to me. And you can share what it is.
How it's gotten to the place that it's gotten is that we like do it in the middle of the night.
We do it in the middle of the night.
Like half asleep.
So we wake up to go to the bathroom every night because we're over 40.
Yeah. And hydrated, trying to be hydrated in this life.
And usually what happens is if you get up first, when you get back to bed, I'll say, I love you. If I get up first, you say, you okay? And then I say, yep. And you'll say, I love you. It's even in the middle of the night. Just, I love you.
But I think it's helpful to know that like it didn't start that way and we had to like change. But I think what's so incredible is, and I think one of the things, I remember we had these conversations early on when we were trying to lead Bright City together, is the trust of the Spirit of God in other people.
Yeah.
And like what is so incredible, and I don't know who needs to hear this, but what is beautiful is that the Spirit of God is actually going to change people, not like sniping or bickering or correcting.
Yeah.
Like the Holy Spirit is such an incredible teacher.
Yeah.
And such an incredible, force to make us into being more like Christ.
Yeah.
And so even to the point where I know as spouses where you could start being the change that you want to see in the relationship. And so when you start exercising and operating out of that identity, what it actually does is rather than correcting the person, it like calls something out of them.
Yes.
Where they're like, oh my gosh, like I'm being a jerk. And they might not know what to do with that immediately.
Yeah.
It might just lead to them stop doing it. It might not lead to life speaking.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to cause something in them to want to change when you start operating out of who God's made you to be, which is a life speaker. And, we say this all the time. And one of the things that is a core teaching of our church is that the power of life and death are in the tongue. And we actually have a whole session when people join our church about the power of words, because we've seen words operate poorly within the context of a church. And the same is true for marriage. And I think even just grouping those things together, like scripture groups them together, church and marriage. And so it is the same, is that the words are important, and the words can divide, and the words can fracture, and the words can hurt. And so I just think it is one of those things that is so simple to change, but it's also really easy to operate out of the negative because the enemy doesn't want you to be a life speaker. And the other thing I will say about this is I'm not meaning for this to be shameful. I'm really meaning for it to help you see the opportunities that you might be missing out on. But I know for us personally, like we will not be able to hang out and enter into an authentic relationship with other couples who operate this way. Like it is a core value to us that we cannot. Like I think part of it is like time is precious. And like, again, we are ministers of the gospel. We are ministers of the church. Like I'm not saying that we do not draw near to people when they are imperfect, because we are imperfect as well. I'm just saying that with our limited time, our limited relational capital, like what we get to spend this portion of our energy on, it is not spent on couples who are this way. And I mean that in the kindest way of like, we want good for them. But I think we are just finite. And I just know that, like, I don't know, you probably could say it better than I can say it. But
I'm going to say it a lot more direct. I don't know if I'm going to say it as pastorally. Let me say this. I used to be a heavy Enneagram 8 confrontation, call my friends out all the time. I don't play like that anymore. Like just everybody's just trying to walk each other home. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's doing the best they can with what they have. And if I see you walking, in front of a bus, I'll say, get out of the way. That being said, if you are my friend and we are in close relationship and you speak poorly to your husband, I'm going to say directly and will continue to, hey, you can't talk to him like that. I love you so much. Don't do that again. You don't want, it's not who you want to be. I know it's not who you are. Please don't talk to him like that. It's not loving. Let me say it more directly like this. If you're a man and I hear you speak unkindly to your wife, I never want to hang out with you again. It's very hard for me to come back from.
And you should, because you don't feel safe.
I don't. And I've just been in too many incredibly tender spaces where I've experienced sexism and unkindness from men. And so I'm like, I just have the hardest time. I just have the hardest time with it. And so I would just say, like, that doesn't mean like, oh, if you're bad at this, guess what? If this is something you guys struggle with, that is a great place to start. Just speaking life. What if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I will, but he won't. Or I will, but she won't. Just you start anyway. Be the life speaker. Be the one that changes it in your home. And I would say for both of us, we've both in different ways, like in like ways that I might have led the charge in gratitude. Like you might have led the charge in like in affirmation or like really working on that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
and I only brought it up to just say, like, you have no idea the abundance that you're missing out on. In your life because of this. And I would even say, by way of like kids, like, I think that's the thing that bums me out the most is like how we speak to each other is how the generations are going to speak to each other behind us.
Yeah.
Assuming that God doesn't intervene. And so like, I know when I see couples operate out of this, it is like not good for their kids.
And I will say it is helpful to be able to go to our kids when they're having conflict and to be able to say to them, can you imagine something I will often say to our kids is like, can you imagine if I talked to your dad the way you just talked to her or you just talked to him?
Or if our sons talked to you that way.
Absolutely not.
Like respect.
And I mean, you know, our daughter does would not mind us saying this. The number one thing I correct her about is how she speaks to you.
She's spicy. Sometimes I get my first name.
Yeah, which is not appropriate.
Yeah.
But like we treat members of the opposite sex with utmost respect.
Yeah.
Privately, publicly.
Yeah.
It's just how you do it.
Yeah. And I just think we just do not know the lasting legacy impact of our words and how we talk to each other.
Yeah.
And I think if we did, we'd want to change it real quick because I know that how we talk to each other is for better or worse how our kids are going to talk to their spouses and then how their kids are going to do it. And so I just feel like if you want to see the needle move in your marriage at all, like you might be listening and you're like, oh man, I just wish that physically we were here. I wish that this was happening. I wish that was happening. I'm telling you, the best place to start the smallest to see the maximum impact, the ROI, return on investment, is how you speak to one another.
Yeah. I would also say, like, I'd advocate again and plug again coming to something like To Become More, because imagine being in a room with a bunch of people, and we are going to make space to like encourage this, but like imagine being in a room with a bunch of people who are committed to speaking life and vision and hope over one another and like being able to see it modeled in a place.
Yeah.
You know, this is not going to be a marriage retreat where we're going to make like jokes about how your wife spends too much or jokes about how your husband doesn't take the trash out. Like we're done with those tropes. We're done with those stereotypes. Like we don't talk about people like that. You know what I'm saying? Also, you always take the trash out. Also, sometimes I do spend too much, but I'm working on it. I don't know if you've heard the podcast Simple But Supernatural, Spending Freeze. So you know what I'm saying? We're growing. We're changing.
We're growing.
Let's move into the last little part of this conflict, which is like, how do we help other people grow, help each other grow, which I would say is an extension of the life speaking conversation. So if I was going to give you 2 practical tools for being a life speaker in your marriage, for having a marriage that is like only built on words of life, my 2 practical tools would be this. Number 1 would be work on greetings. A couple of years ago, I almost wrote a book on speaking life because I was like, man, this means so much to me. And maybe I still will. But one thing when I was researching for the book was the idea that like something that's so compelling about the letters and the epistles in the Bible, specifically Paul's, is that Paul would go ham on a greeting before he spanked somebody. Yeah. So he'd be like, I love you so much, my brother in Christ. I'm an apostle of Christ. I love you. I've been thinking about you. I'm thanking God for you. Also, sit down. Be quiet.
Who's bewitched you?
Also, who's bewitched you, Galatians? Anyways, all that being said, you turn up the volume on greeting and the rest of your day will flow differently. Let me tell you what I mean. Your kids walk down the stairs in the morning and you say like, hey, good morning. How are you?
Oh, you're funny with this. I'm like, I'm going to need another cup of coffee for this. But you hit the ground like running.
Good morning. I love you. How'd you sleep? What's on your day today? How can I pray for you today? How can I be on your team today? I think sometimes our kids think I'm kidding. Yeah. When I'm like, you're a God dream. Yeah. God is mighty in you. I'm so glad you woke up this morning.
They're like, I need a bagel.
It's okay. Because for me, it's about me. Yeah. If I start with greeting with life instead of like, oh my gosh, you're late, or like, oh, I have so much to do today, or like, ugh, blah, 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 whatever it is. Like, you're going to wear that. Like, you start with how you greet people and it changes the rest of the conversation. It disarms people. It makes them feel safe. It sets the tone. So that's my number 1 practical tool, work on your greetings. Number 2 is this: speak to who your spouse is in the Lord, not who they are acting like. Is all of this conversation to say we don't have hard conversations with one another? No. You are my pastor. Yeah. For all intents and purposes, I am your pastor. Like, I'm the closest thing you got. Yeah. That's not true. You have other men who speak into your life.
I know what you're saying.
But you know what I'm saying? I'm the one who sees you day in and day out. We are the one who see each other day in and day out. We are one.
One flesh.
So if there's an area of concern, we're going to be the first people to see it. And we're probably going to be the most equipped to speak into it. The catch is we will have spoken so much life over one another that it's going to be safe to bring the correction. And we're going to speak to who you are, not to who you're acting like. So if I have a concern with your leadership, I'm going to come to you and say, like, you are an incredible leader. God has placed you where you're at on purpose. I love all these. And I'm not gassing you up. I'm not faking it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm reminding you this is who you are. Hey, this thing that I'm worried about, it's just not who you are.
Mm-hmm.
This thing that you did or that you're struggling with, it's just not who you are. And it's not who we are. Like, can I call you up to something different instead of calling you out in shame? And I would say the same is true for conversations regarding like your health,
Mm-hmm.
picking up around the house, community, like how we want to move in community, spiritual disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to share, maybe this time around recording this, why don't you share the story about when I stopped reading my Bible? I'll give the caveat.
I don't know if I don't share it as well as you do. I can try.
I'll tee you up.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you share it as well as I do. And you don't want to know why, because you won't make fun of me, but I'll make fun of me. So I'll share it and you add in your thoughts.
Yeah.
You are a person who consistently spends time with God every single day of your life.
I try.
You do try.
Yeah.
I believe the stat I shared on the podcast when we first recorded it is in our 20 years of marriage, I don't know that I could count 10 days in your life in the last 20 years that you haven't spent time with the Lord.
I try to something in the Word every day.
You try to spend time with God and the Word. You are very faithful about that.
Yeah.
I love the Word.
Uh-huh.
I love the Bible. I love spending time with God. Give me a quiet time. That being said, I've been in a harrowing season.
Mm-hmm.
And in the last year, I had just racked with grief and disappointment with the Lord.
Yeah.
I had already confessed this in community with Josh and Katie Walters.
Yes, we were out date night.
We were out at a date night and I was like, hey, by the way, I'm not really reading the Bible right now.
Yeah.
And my sister, who is the nicest person in the world, got into it with me in the most loving way. She was like, hey, we're not doing that.
Yeah. She said, you can't do that anymore.
You can't do that anymore. You got to read the Bible. But I didn't listen to her. So I was still, that's not to say that I wasn't reading the Bible. I'm in seminary. At the time I was reading like, a book of the Bible a week, or at least listening to it on the Joel app.
But this one portion of your life.
But this like coming to God to hear from him and pray, maybe even just like the act of like opening my Bible and journaling a little bit for me, that was falling off the wayside. I was studying the Bible, but I wasn't like coming to the Word to receive from God. And so instead, what I would do in that portion of my morning is that I would get up and I would just get on my phone. This was, I would say, like fall of 2024 was when it was really bad. And so one morning, you got up to read the Bible as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I went into the living room and I think I pulled my Bible out and I pulled my journal out because I was ready. I just wasn't going to use it. And I put my phone on top and I think I started watching Reels. And later that day, we went on a walk or something.
We were walking. It was a Saturday.
And you said, so how was your time with the Lord this morning? And I said, oh, I didn't spend time with the Lord this morning. And you said, I know. I could hear your reels from the bedroom. So will you speak to like internally what was happening and like what your thought process was? Because obviously you knew that was not God's best for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think I'm not saying that I do everything right, but one of the things that I've found out early on is, especially given my like personality type and how I operate, is I could tell you what's wrong or I can ask you questions and you can discover what's wrong.
Yeah.
And so I could have woken up and we could have went on our walk and done our thing. And I'd have been like, hey, you didn't read your Bible this morning.
Yeah.
But what could have been interesting is maybe you did. And all I heard was Reels.
Yeah.
Like maybe, and so what could have happened in that moment is I could have accused, which is something that the enemy does, is accuse, and it could have shot down. Maybe you were like the first morning you woke up and you were like, I just need a psalm and some funny Reels. Like God, that's what I need this morning is some psalms and a funny reel or two.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm going to be better with today's going to be okay because we all need a funny reel. And if I would have said that in that way, it probably would have just crushed your spirit. Like, hey, I actually did finally. And so I didn't know wholly, but what I heard was Reels. And honestly, I was like, maybe she did. And so giving the benefit of the doubt and asking the question, how was your time with God?
Yeah.
And because it could have been like, God, I'm so angry. I'm so frustrated. And that's time with God.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just one of those things that we've seen the most fruit of is asking very obvious questions
Yeah.
versus like making what could be obvious accusations that aren't so obvious.
Yeah.
And so I think just, in all of it, how we've been talking is I just feel like you have an opportunity as a couple. Again, going back to this retreat is that phrase to become more.
Yeah.
Is I just feel like people like lose their mind in marriage and they become half of themselves, or they become somebody that God hasn't created them to be, when actually marriage is this like thing that's meant to make us become more of who God's made us to be.
Yeah.
And so for us, like we have just wanted to live in such a way and be married in such a way where when I see your life or when I see who God's making you to be, is I want you to become more of who God's made you to be.
Yeah.
And I want to be a part of that process, like to become more.
Yeah.
And so I think in everything, by way of even something as simple as what we were talking about in reading the Bible, it's like, man, I'm not out here to like throw shade and say like, I get the gold star. I read my Bible more than you and I'm holier than you. Like that's not the point. Is to see you operate in who God's created you to be, and you be the fullest version of yourself. And that's what marriage is wanting that for your spouse. And so I just say all that to say, like, in conflict resolution, in intimacy, in the extenuating circumstances, and all of it is you have a choice, and that you could be the person in your person's life to make them become more like Christ, or you could actually chip away at them and they become less of who God's created them to be.
Yeah.
And then one day we're going to get to heaven and it's going to be like, hey, what did you do with your marriage? Or like, what did you do with this person that I entrusted you with?
Yeah.
Which I think is in Ephesians, he talks about like washing your spouse with the water of the word. It's like, man, there is an accountability coming for us in heaven about how we steward our spouse.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I want
to. It's going to go well for you.
I don't know. I hope it does. But I want to be able to ask the questions rather than make accusations.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the way I would love to end this podcast is just to say, like, I'm so glad that we weren't trying to podcast about marriage years 0 to 12.
Yeah. I'm grateful for a generation that comes out and is not scared to make content.
Yeah.
And
I don't say that to shame, because you might have a great marriage and be in years 0 to 12. You might have a great one.
There's a way to do it right.
Yeah. We did not.
Oh, I would have.
We had a great marriage, but it was a lot of what we're talking about that feels like fruit and easy. Like, it does not feel difficult for me to speak life over you.
Yeah.
That did feel difficult for a long time.
Yeah.
And
probably wasn't very life-giving.
Yeah. And I'm sure I wasn't either. I know I wasn't. There's no, I'm sure about it. I want to say, like, again, with a healthy dose of like, it would be so rude of us if we were like, it's going to be great. Sex is going to be great. Conflict is going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Just speak life. It's going to be great. Like, this is a wrestle.
Mm-hmm.
It's one that's worth it.
Worth it.
This is a fight. It's worth it.
It's worth it.
And then you go through a season where like, and then it doesn't feel like a fight, and you're just standing there beside your best friend and you're like, thank God.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we kept fighting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like if you will fight for a healthy marriage, you will be a healthy person.
Yeah.
You will have a healthy, vibrant professional life.
Yeah.
Your kids will be better for it. Like, I don't know. It's just, again, going back to that, to become more. Like, there is so much more that could happen in your life.
Yeah.
If you have a healthy marriage.
Yeah. Please join us at To Become More. If you can, July 21st and 22nd, see the link in our profile to sign up. Josh and Katie Walters will be there. We have some incredible couples coming. Yeah. You're going to get teaching. You're going to get coaching. There's going to be specifically designed experiences for you to walk in intimacy and growth together. There's options for like add-on coaching and photo shoots. It's going to be a beautiful time. Charleston is a dream. Also, I will say the retreat is July 21st and 22nd. Our 20-year anniversary
is the 23rd.
It's the 23rd. It's the day after the retreat. So it's going to be vibes. It's going to be party vibes. The whole thing is going to feel like a party in Jesus' name.
And I think the one thing I keep thinking about whenever I do things like this, because it's, money doesn't grow on trees. And if it does, please tell me where to find the tree.
Yeah.
But I want to know, how am I going to leave something transformed, and what is the deliverable that I'm going to have?
Yeah.
And what I love about what we have to offer is you are going to leave with a common language and tools to be able to take into your marriage for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So that you can talk to your spouse and you can have and develop this healthy relationship. But the other thing that I feel like we are so passionate about is vision and dreams.
Yeah.
And I just feel like the deliverable of having a shared vision and dream,
Yeah.
and being able to leave with that,
Yeah.
is priceless.
Yeah.
Like, it's just priceless.
Yeah.
Because I just know so many people are living their life without a destination.
Yeah.
I don't think that, I don't know, like, I just don't think the errands of like Costco and Trader Joe's and, doing the little things of this life, which are great, but I don't think that that's the dream that God the only thing that God has for you.
Amen.
I think there's more. And
Amen.
so just being able to leave with that is going to be huge.
Amen. We hope to see you there. Hey, thanks for fighting for this podcast for the second time.
We fought hard.
We fought hard. It was enjoyable. It was life-giving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you. I love you.
I love you.
I love being your wife.
I love being your husband.
Friends, I'm so grateful you listened to today's episode. Thanks for spending time with me. It would mean the world to me to connect with you. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at Jess A. Connolly, or head to my website, jessconnolly.com, for more ways to connect. If you have a minute to subscribe and leave a review of the podcast wherever you listen, it would massively help us reach more people with the good news that they can live fully awake. Let's go.